Hello and welcome to the Genuine Learning Blog. My name is Melissa Galasso, and today we're going to talk about a FASB exposure draft related to leases. The other day my husband asked, are you really still teaching that standard? I've been teaching this before it was issued as an exposure draft, and then another exposure draft, and then since it's been issued, and then a number of different exposure drafts to amend it. And so yes, I'm still speaking on leases, the gift that keeps on giving. In this scenario, though, we are focused on the discount rate. Now, I think this is an opportunity for us to provide feedback to the FASB about the discount rate. So we should take a look at what they're proposing. So the discount rate here is related to cost and complexity. So the FASB is doing outreach. They did 2 public roundtable sessions on the lease standard, and many entities had indicated that there are a lot of costs and complexities related to coming up with the rates that are incremental borrowing rates. And so the incremental borrowing rate would require that every lease have a rate related to the length of time that it's going to be outstanding, the underlying value of that's being borrowed essentially. And so in the ASU, in ASU 2016-02, they offer a alternative for private companies, and that is to use a risk-free rate as an accounting policy election. However, this is only for entities that are not public entities, so our private companies and our nonprofits. And when they looked at this, they wanted to provide some flexibility in how they determined the rate. But what we have found is that most entities are not using the rate. And so when we look at this, this again applies to non-public entities, including nonprofits, whether or not they're conduit bond obligors, all nonprofits are included, and employee benefit plans, whether or not they file or furnish with the SEC. So anything, any non-public entity, any nonprofit, any employee benefit plan is eligible for this alternative. And basically right now, you have to opt in to just using the risk-free rate for as your private company alternative. Now they're going to allow us to make the election to use a risk-free rate at the underlying, by class of underlying assets instead of at that entity-wide rate. So the accounting policy election was for all leases. And so they're coming back and saying, okay, we're not going to make you do it for all leases, but you can do it for some leases that you can't come up with an incremental borrowing rate. Now, if you do that, you would then have to obviously disclose which classes of assets you're using this for. Now, the importance here is that many people find the risk-free rate to be punitive, right? You can't borrow at zero risk. And right now, interest rates are still at a very low. They're not an all-time low anymore, but they are lower than expected. And so people have said this is not really reflective of their true borrowing. And again, the lower the interest rate, the larger the liability. So as we go through this, this is something that, a lot of people are, criticizing. I would have liked to have seen a weighted average cost of capital or something alternative to the risk-free rate. Unfortunately, decided not to go down the path of identifying another alternative rate. They're just giving us flexibility in how we use the risk-free rate. If, however, there is a rate implicit in the rate and it is readily determinable, you would not be able to use the incremental borrowing rate or the risk-free rate, even if you had made the risk-free rate election. If it is known, right, and readily determinable, then you need to use that. And so that was a clarification that they made here. So when would you do this? Well, it really depends on if you've already adopted the standard or not. So if you haven't adopted the standard, you would do this along with the same time that you adopt Topic 842, which for many entities will be next year. You would apply the existing transition guidance. On the other hand, for entities who have already adopted 842, then in this scenario, once they have a final ASU, because again, this is a proposal, then in that scenario, we would want to adopt this for fiscal years beginning after December 15, 21, which would be calendar 22, aligning it basically with the adoption of the rest of the standards for private entities. However, you could early adopt. Now, I think personally, this is an opportunity to share with FASB maybe some of the downsides of the risk-free rate and potentially see if they're willing to make any changes here. I have a feeling they're not. I think they're trying to keep the standard pretty close to as is, but giving a little bit more flexibility here in adoption. But again, that's what comment letters are for. So give feedback on this risk-free rate. Is it doable? Is it something that you would use? Or are you going to have to go through that incremental borrowing rate? And what are some of the pros and cons there? So hopefully this gives you a little bit of food for thought, and you might give that comment letter, although it is a quick turnaround, an opportunity. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you on a future blog. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.